Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. Look at this beauty we've got here. This is a 1970-something Chicago coin Dolphin pinball machine. Flipper, Dolphin, get it? Ha, that's awesome. Very cool looking machine. It's a two-player. It has a bunch of 60s and 70s looking colors on it. Got the girls in the back box wearing their swimsuits and everything. They're keeping it PG. That's good. You got Flipper doing his little cameo there. And it looks like they're at SeaWorld or Marineland down in Florida back in the day. And everybody's having a good time. In my opinion, even the Dolphins. So, we've been working on this thing a little bit. And in the last video, we got everything in the mechanism board down on the bottom cleaned up and worked on. We cleaned all the Jones plugs. And we are now up to, we need to work through the back box of this sucker. So let me show you what a Chicago coin back box of this vintage looks like. Now it's only a two-player, so there are 5 score reels or score numbers for each player, but only 4 score reels because one of them's fake. So there's just a 0 tacked on the end to make your score higher. Because that's how they roll. And, you know, I don't want to hear any crap about that because on the modern games, they stack like, 10,000 points on the end of your score. So them stacking 10 on the end don't really mean much to me. But, so we need to clean all these score reels. And again, it's a Chicago coin, so it's a little different than the ones that you usually see. Most people are looking for the Gottlieb, Bally, or Williams games. Personally, I like the ones that you don't see as often. So something like this, a Chicago coin game, I would be, very happy to have in my game room. There's nothing wrong with them. There's only a few relays. So this one is probably going to be the score reset relay. See how there's 8 blades and then there's 8 score reels. So at the beginning of the game, that probably pulls in and resets all the score reels back to 0. And sure enough, it says score reset relay. Okay. So these are going to be your 10, 100, and 1,000. Or maybe that's 10, that's 100, and 1,000. They could have went weird and did 10, 100,000. I don't know. We'll have to look at the label. The 10 to 90 relay, the 100 to 900 relay, and the 1,000s relay. This is their player control unit, which they would stack boards on theirs. So there's actually 2 sets of spiders on this one. So you've got the typical one that's on the front on most stepper units, but this is a double-decker stepper unit. And there is another spider in there. It looks scarier than it actually is. You just take the thing apart. It only really goes back 2 ways. You thought I was going to say 1 way, didn't you? No, it'll go 2 ways. But you should be able to figure out if it's the 1 way or the wrong way. And then here we have the coin unit. A little tribute to YouTube of yesteryear. So the coin unit, simple little stepper unit like we've seen on everything else. Strangely, it has its own fuse. It has a 2 amp slow blow fuse. Coin unit step up coil fuse. That might be something interesting to figure out. Because look at this. Here's the player unit. Player control unit. And it does not have a fuse. Why is there one on the coin unit, but not on the player unit? Or the bonus unit, or the ball count unit that we messed with last time. Or actually, I guess this is the bonus unit. No, this is the match unit. 0 to 90 unit. Or, what do our buddies in Australia call it? The 0 to 90 unit. The 0 to 9 unit. That's what the guys at the Goat Shed EM Pinball Repair Palace say. If you haven't seen them, we are subscribed to them on YouTube. Go check their channel out. They are fantastic. Yeah, there's just not a ton of stuff here. There are 5 stepper units. 4 stepper units. You'd think I'd learn to count eventually. I'm going to say there's 5 because that's a double. There's 4.5 stepper units. So we got to clean all those up. We got just a few relays, and then we've got 8 score reels. I mean, that's all there is to it. I cleaned up the Jones plugs on the previous video. So I think first thing I'll do, what I usually do, is clean these relays. This is how my mind thinks. The way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. I love that phrase, right? So whenever you have a big task like this, what you want to do is break it down into small little steps. And the way my mind thinks too is a lot of times I'll put a time on it. So like right now it's about 8:30. So in my mind I think, there's 4 relays there. I ought to be able to clean all those switches before 9 o'clock. You're right. And then I start in on them and I'll get done at 8:40 and then I'll say, see, told you so. And then I move on to the next thing. That player control unit, that's about a 30-minute job there. It's 8:41 right now. I should be done with that about 9:11. And then I'll get done at 9:20 and I'll go, well, that's not too bad. Life is free, people. Okay, so yeah, I think I will do these relays first. What I do is I take a little flat file and I clean all of the little contacts. You're just trying to get all of the grease off of there and the dirt and the oxidation and the tarnish and the crud. Look at it. Look how dirty. So you want that to be shiny, where you know that the power is going to go through it whenever they touch. And when, what's that song? Ooh, and when we touch fire, whatever. That's what you want. You want to make sure the electricity can go through. Here's one that's stuck shut. That's great. What in the world? What in the world? I don't think it actually is. It just kind of looks like it. Yeah, there's a little space between them. No touching now. No touching. No touching. It's like those dances that I hear they used to have at schools, and they'd go by and they'd put something between you to make sure you weren't touching. I wouldn't know nothing about that. Whenever I went to school, you could dirty dance, no problem. Okay, so yeah, let me clean those up, and it looks like they are all adjusted fine, but if I see anything weird, I will film it for you. So I've torn this all apart. Okay, so I'll show you what to do, how to put it back. So the shaft in there, the gear, will move, right? And all of the stepper units are like this. Basically, if you've got it where it's just the metal gear and nothing else is on it, it should move really well. Now see how this is, it's like the old telephones. That's moving perfect. So I'm pushing it and then the spring is pulling it back, right? This one they've got pretty tight, but the reason that this one is a little more tight than they usually are is because, again, it's moving 2 sets of spiders. So they've probably wrapped this spring around 1 extra turn. That's a little bit stronger than you would normally want it, right? Because whenever this pulls in, that tooth has to go up, right? So it just moved 1 spot, and look, it won't move again. That's because it's the player control relay, and there's only 2 players. So whenever I hit this, it's going to go back. But one of the ways you can tell if the bushing or anything is messed up is just try it with nothing on it. So it's loose now. I mean, it's working perfect now. There's obviously nothing wrong with this shaft going through that bushing. I put a little bit of 3-in-1 oil on it just to make sure, but it's good. Okay, so now that that's good, we're going to do the next part. So all we have right now is this board. Now I've cleaned it with some light sandpaper. This is 220 grit, right? And just shined it up. Some people don't like that. They want to polish it. That's fine. Whatever you want to do, but you want it to be nice and clean like that. All right. So the next thing that I do is I put dielectric grease on it. I've actually had people argue with me about that in the past. From the factory, they put that on there on a lot of stuff. Okay. Often that is the grease that's on it that's all dirty that you're cleaning off. Like, look at this. Yeah. So it just depends on the company. Gottlieb is the king of electromechanical games, and they put it on theirs. They had their own special sauce they put on there, right? So it helps to put something on there. And the reason is you're doing this stepper is doing two things. One, it's connecting electricity through the little fingers into the traces on the board, which are then connected to wires, right? So the whole purpose of this is to connect, for instance, all of the second player score reels to the, or to activate them or whatever, right? So it needs to electrically connect. So dielectric grease both helps an electrical connection whenever things are touching, basically, and it also insulates the electrical connection so that it doesn't let it spark over into other traces and all of that crap, right? So it works perfect. And then it lubricates the fingers as they turn over the board. So the main problem with a stepper unit is that whenever these turn, they don't easily move across this board. So that grease will help that. So get you some dielectric grease. If you don't have any and you want to get some from us, if we have a link to it on Amazon. Go on our website, lionsarcade.com. There's a parts page at the top. We've got a bunch of stuff like this linked on there to Amazon that we use in our videos. And if you buy any of that stuff or buy anything after going to Amazon through those links, it gives us a tip. So we appreciate everybody that's been doing that. But we use it on all of these stepper units. It really helps, in my opinion. So I'm going to put a little bit of that grease on there. And then the other thing that you have to worry about is something is going to go against that little washer looking thing on the bushing there. See the bushing where it sticks out and the brass or the copper wheel is going through it? I guess that's copper. Sure looks like copper, don't it? Whatever that is going through the bushing. So I've oiled it in there, but one of the issues that you run into sometimes is that whatever goes up against that, and on this particular machine, it's this. This is going to press right up against that. And once everything else gets fitted on there, that's going to be almost press fitted on there. You right? And so you've got this on the end. You may be able to tell on this one. Yeah, see the bushing down in there? And then that metal thing, whatever it is on this one, is touching the bushing. Well, that's another source of friction, right? So you need to put something there. Look, there's some kind of grease on this already from somewhere, sometime. So you need to clean this surface and then put just a light coating of oil or the dielectric grease on it so that whenever the metal is touching the metal, again, it has some kind of lubricant. If it's just this dry metal on that, it'll get all gummed up and stick, and it might even dig into each other. So if you get one that's sticking, check that, right where that bushing, the face of that bushing hits this, and make sure it's not all gummed up. So step one, oil the gear as you put it back in. So step two, dielectric grease on the board and clean the fingers, put them all back. They're in position. This particular one, and they're all different, you gotta be careful when you take them apart, has a little shaft and there's two little washers there. Okay, and the shaft holds that down once you put the outside board on. So that's step two. So step three is to go ahead and remount this outside board. So we got it mounted back, so next step is to do the same with this board. So we're going to clean it with a little bit of sandpaper, and then we're going to put a little bit of dielectric grease on it. Okay, so I cleaned it up, put a little bit of dielectric grease on it. Let me show you something that's happening with these, some of these older machines. The Chicago coins definitely. I think the old Valleys have this same setup, but I'm not sure. Someone that's been doing more of them or has a better memory than me might be able to tell. Look at the actuator on this thing. So this coil, see that wafer board, Bakelite, whatever you want to call it. It's not really Bakelite, I don't think. It's more like fiber board, wafer board. See how that's crooked? It's just because it's bent over time. See how that one's crooked? Now, it's not that big of a deal at the moment. But look at this. See how that's also crooked? I don't know if you can tell, but that thing is bowed, that board. It's just an old phenolic board or whatever. Well, let's see how many names we can think of for it. So see how this one is also bowed? Time is doing that to us. One of these days, somebody's going to have to start reproducing this stuff. It'll happen eventually, but it just hasn't happened yet. But because this one is bowed, now remember that middle shaft is inside a bushing on this one. So it's perfectly centered because there's a metal bushing running through it. But since it's bowed, it's cupped, right? Like that. What it's doing is it's pulling this front one back, right? And so because of that, on the front, it's not centered. Now it's just off a little bit, but see how it's closer to the bottom than the top? And part of it is because that sleeve is slightly loose. But it's bowing it just a little bit to where it's pulling the bottom of this board up closer to the middle of that. As time goes on, those are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So eventually somebody's going to reproduce these, I think. On the later Chicago coins, they had an edge connector that plugged into the side of them, and they're much worse. The boards burn up. They literally get scorches on the traces where the electricity arcs between the two traces after it slides over it. So the way it works is you're running, it's usually 30 volts, but you're running 30 volts through this finger, and you're on this pad, and it needs to go to this pad. So as it's sliding, it breaks contact with that pad right as it's connecting to this pad, or it may even connect to both at the same time, and it makes sparks jump, like little arcs and stuff, and it eventually just burns the boards up. So these don't do it. These look very nice, actually. They're bowed a little bit, but other than that, they look about as good as they did when they were made. But those later ones are pretty rough. So somebody's going to have to reproduce these at some point. But maybe we're not there yet. So let me, next step is let's put the spider back on after cleaning the fingers on it, the contacts, and then put the washers and the nut on the end of it. All right, so we're all back together. Now, when you put that nut on there on the end, you don't have to go, you know, freaking Incredible Hulk on it, people. So don't, like, get it so tight that the thing can't possibly move because you're binding it up. There should be a little bit of play in it. So I'll show you on mine. So there's play. That might be a little bit too much play, but it's doable, right? You want it to be able to breathe down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, if you do have too much play in it where it's not pushed in enough, what'll happen is these fingers will curl up. So instead of it being touching the rivet, because it's so curled up, it's off the rivet a little bit. If you were to push it down, it would flatten it out where it pushes out and touches the rivet. So it's kind of a back and forth. This one, yeah, see, here's one from the factory, or it hasn't been worked on in a while, and it has play in it. Not as much as mine does right now. So I might turn that a couple more turns, a couple more small revolutions. That gap there might be a little bit too big. But, you know, it doesn't have to be where you're smashing the freaking thing. So that's that one. I've got 3 more here to do. That one was 1.5. Okay, here are the schematics, or close enough. This is for a game the next year that had the same setup. So I'm wondering why there is a slow blow fuse on the coin unit step-up coil. It's not on anything else, but they have purposefully put a slow blow fuse on the coin unit step-up coil. Every coil in the game could lock on at one time or another. And the step-up coil on the bonus unit doesn't have a fuse, on the player unit doesn't have a fuse, but it does on the coin unit step-up coil. There's no fuse on the credit unit. So I'm trying to figure out why that is. I believe it's because this appears to be the first thing that gets zapped if the coin switch gets stuck. It's a micro switch, but when the quarter falls through the coin mech, sometimes, every once in a while, they get lodged on the switch. Like, it'll just get stuck where it's hanging on there. And the switch will go down, and it won't move enough for the quarter to fall by. And just if everything's perfect and it's balanced just right, it'll get stuck right on the switch. So if that were to happen on this game, let's say on the quarter micro switch there, it would turn on the game reset relay. And then there is a switch on the game reset relay that should turn on the score motor. When the game reset relay comes on, it will hold itself on with this switch. And then it should start the coin motor, the score motor. The score motor should open that switch, which turns all of this off. Problem would be, if the coin was stuck on this switch, I think it would just keep energizing that. But you'd think that all it would do is just add a whole bunch of credits to it. So I don't know. But that game reset relay is what turns on the coin unit step-up coil. So it must have something to do with they're afraid that the coin switch is going to get stuck. And so to keep that coil from burning up on the coin unit step-up coil, they put a fuse on it. That's all I can guess, but I can't tell for sure. But if I just had to throw a dart at the dartboard, that's probably it. They're probably worried that that switch is going to get stuck down, because that does happen from time to time. So if on your machine that switch gets stuck, it may blow that fuse. So I'm moving right through it. See the paper on the credit wheel? It's been retaped. I'm pretty sure they taped it on in the wrong spot, because you can't get the 0, you get the 1 credit. Why would they, come on people, why would you move the people? It's in a, they put, it's in a specific, come on people, they put the paper in a particular place. Come on now. All right, so I'm up to the score reels. You know I love working on score reels. Okay. These ones are pretty cool. I've done all these before, but I forget. I forget sometimes, folks. So all it has is a end of stroke switch that's easy to adjust and clean. And then all of the carry to 1, put this there, make that do what it do, all of that stuff is handled by this wiper that's on the outside of the score reel. Let me show you how it is to service this. I think I might be able to do it with one hand. There's a screw. You take off the screw. Well, this is a customer's. I don't want to goof around and mess it up. Let me take the screw off real quick. If it was my machine, you know, I could play around with it, but it's a customer's. I don't want to break something on somebody else's machine. And look at this. The little wiper comes off, but the score reel is held in place by a spring and a C-clip or a hairpin clip. So you don't have to take that off if it's working all right. Also, because there's no levers or anything on the Bally's and the Williams and the Gottliebs, they have little levers that move to push switches that are on the edge of the score reel. This one doesn't have that. It just has a wiper that goes around, and it has several contacts. Now on the Williams, Bally, Gottlieb, they have just 2 contacts, right? But since this one has several, it can do several things. So they can be used to do the 9 position switch, for instance. So when one of these reels, like this one, gets to 9, something needs to happen. Something's got to give. And so what happens on any of them is that a switch closes, so that the next time this one gets another point, it also adds a point to the next one. And that's how they count up, right? So the way they're doing it on Chicago Coin is just with a disc on the side. Now, I'm not sure if these are as reliable, but since there's just rotary movement, you don't have the problem that you have on the other ones where they often hang going from 9 to 0 because it has to push that extra switch. On this, it won't have to do that. So very simple to service. Just clean the score reel, get it nice and clean, and then clean the the disc like we did on the player control unit. And then put a little tiny bit. You could probably get away with not using it on this, but I'm going to use it anyway. Just a little tiny bit of dielectric grease on it. I wouldn't go real thick. Just a little bit of it, and put it all back together, and that should work great. Okay, one other thing. That's keyed, so whenever you take it off, it'll only go back on one way. Very easy to figure out. But check this out. I didn't notice it because I was doing those ones down there first. But look at this. See if you can discover it. Do you see anything weird? They designed the things so tight that the actuator, the what do you want to call it? The cam. Our viewer, Plum Girly, was commenting the other day that they think that a cam turns linear motion into circular motion or whatever. So I don't know if it's cam or not, maybe. But look, it's inside the other one. So the cam is on the outside of this, and it fits inside the other reel when it's mounted. Look at that. That's a ballsy way to design it, isn't it? So this fits inside that when you mount it in the cabinet. So it's turning and everything inside the other one. Look at that. And so they designed it small enough to turn inside the score reel next to it. Very cool. I didn't see any of the other companies try that crap, but it looks, it seems to work. Wow. They had some guys and gals at Chicago Coin willing to throw it at the wall, apparently. I forgot a lot of our viewers are overseas. We have a saying in the United States, at least. It's probably an old English saying. Let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. See what sticks. So it's just an old saying. Okay, so I don't have the Dolphin schematics yet. There's some online, but they're horrible. You can't read them. So this is Chicago Coin's Olympics pinball machine, which was also a 2-player and came out within a year of Dolphin. So it's this kind of stuff, like resetting the score reels, it's going to be the same on every game. It may be different on a 4-player or a 1-player, though. But on a 2-player, it should be exactly the same. So when the start relay pulls in, now you can guess that the start relay pulls in at the beginning of the game. This switch will close. When that switch closes, power now can run through here. And if the score reset relay is on, which is that big one that I was pushing on in the back that was clicking over and over again. So that was definitely closing. If any of the score reels are at any position other than 0, they will be touching this trace. And power will travel through the little finger, through the trace to this trace, which will provide power to the coil that moves the score reel forward one position, right? Eventually, the score reset relay will release because it's on the score motor cam where it pulses it instead of holding it on. So it's going it's tapping it 5 times, right? So this will step forward 5 times. Eventually it will get to 0, maybe the first time like that one did, or maybe it'll be 9 times later like the other ones did. But when they get to 0, it will no longer be connected and it won't push it forward anymore. Okay? Now that one that was hanging, it got to 5 and then stopped, if you saw that. It was at 1, and then it got to 5, and it stopped. So what happened was, it was at, oh, and I go this way, by the way, because, you know, it counts in order. So it was at 1, it was at 2, it was at 3, it was at 4, and then when it got to 5, this must have no longer been connected. So either right here on that trace or right here on that trace is a spot that is still dirty or corroded or burnt a little bit or something. There's something going on that little board on the side of that one score reel that I need to look at just to make sure that it's making good contact. Now, if you noticed, whenever I touched the score reel, it went blap, 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 and started moving. So basically, that little finger on that wheel wasn't touching good enough, or there was something there that it didn't like, or whatever. Whenever I touched it, it moved. So I need to clean that a little bit, make sure that that can move right past that on its own without anybody touching it. So that's the score reel part. But then they all got back to 0, and it just kept going. So you start looking for clues. So the score reset relays just kept going. Clack, 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 clack. That's because they will do that as long as the score motor's turning. Well, the score motor turns all the time. It'll turn during the middle of a game to score things. It turns often. But the score reset, the score reels only reset at the beginning of the game. That's because this can only connect power through if the start relay is connected. So if the start relay is pulled in, it will do that. So what happened was the start relay stayed on. It did not drop out. The score reels all reset, but the score reset relay just kept going because the start relay kept going. So the start relay is trying to do several things, though, so there must be something else that it's trying to do that's not happening. So here is the start relay. There's a number 1 start relay and a number 2 start relay, just to be confusing. The only reason they do that is because they needed more switches, so they have 2 of them that trip at the same time. So basically when it trips the other one. Now, whenever you get a switch like this attached to a coil, so see how it says number 1 start relay, and then it shows a normally closed switch on the number 1 start relay. What that's telling you is that when this trips, it's going to turn itself off. So when this trips, this is going to open. Well, if it opens, that would fall loose again, right? It would close again. It would not, because this is a trip relay. So once it pulls in, that relay is tripped. And the reason they do this is just so that it doesn't keep getting power after it trips. It doesn't need any power after that first time. So as soon as it opens, as soon as the start relay turns on, it will turn off the switch on itself that will make it where it can no longer get power. So that's on that relay bank that's down in the bottom of the game that we were working on last time. So that has obviously tripped. So we need to get our start relay to turn off. Well, since it's on that bank, then we need the slide bank. They're calling it that because the switches slide down, or the little actuator slides down. We need to get the slide bank reset coil to fire to reset the start relay. So it does that at some point as the score motor is turning and the switch at E2 closes. But you have to have the slide bank reset relay on, not to be confused with the slide bank reset coil. So the slide bank reset coil is the big coil on the side of the slide bank that actually resets it. The slide bank reset relay is the relay that tells that coil to reset it. So we need to figure out, how do you get the slide bank reset relay to pull in? Well, interestingly enough, all 8 of the drum unit discs have to be at their 0 position. And when they are, power will connect through all 8 of them. When the wiper is back at 0, it will connect power all the way through, bam, 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 all 8 reels. And as long as that switch on the start relay is closed, because the start relay is down, right? As the score motor turns, this switch will close, B3. It will send power to the slide bank reset relay. As long as A7 is also closed. That's weird that they have 2 at the same time that need to be closed, but whatever. So we've probably got a problem, since I was just messing with it, where one of these 8 drum units, when it's at 0, these switches are not connected properly. So one of them I don't have quite right. Alright, so one didn't seem to be making good contact. I've moved this other one back to 1. Let's see if it'll go past 5 where it was getting hung before. Let's try it again. Perfect. All this isn't working right because I've got the apron off and it's not down in there where it needs to be. And we don't have the legs on it yet or any of that. But I think we've got the stuff in the back box resetting and doing what it's supposed to do. Alright folks, so that'll do it for this one. We need to work on the playfield next. We got to order a whole bunch of parts for that. This gentleman wanted us to get a bunch of new stuff for it, make it look really nice. So we're going to wait on parts for that, but they should be here in a day or two. But I hope you enjoyed it. There's one other little thing going on in the back box where those score reels all look like they're about half turned. I think those are mounted a little bit higher in the back box. We should be able to mess with that a little bit whenever we take the back glass out. So, hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. And make sure to check out my brother Donnie. My brother has his own channel here on YouTube. The link is down below each one of our videos. It's called the My Brother Donnie channel. I'm over there with him on his channel a lot. We do pinball machines, arcade games, and jukeboxes. My brother Donnie does old vehicles, old buildings, and he has a farm. So we have a good time over there. Check it out. We will see you back in about 2 days where we'll continue working on this fantastic flipper game, Dolphin.